Hallo miteinander, I'm Geshi6 and this is Amapani. This is not an all too recent Touhou fan game, predating the time they started being allowed on Steam. Even though I've had it for many years, I've never mentioned it, nor gotten around to making a video about it. Today we are correcting that. As for Amapani itself, it's a very classic action platformer that may not reinvent the wheel, but still has a few things going for it. For instance, there aren't just two Italian plumbers to choose from. We have a selection of 4 very distinguishable girls. Like most adventures of said plumbers, however, there is a world map. We shall start with a very early level, 1-2. The title Amapani abbreviates our heroines Alice, Marissa, Patchouli and Nitori. The great unmoving library will take the lead, pressing up and down switches costumes, so we dress Patchouli in a cool black robe. 2013, a time when free cosmetics were still the norm. As you just saw, we can conjure up fireballs. Only the Witch of the Scarlet Devil Mansion has this weapon. The other ladies have to do without a straightforward projectile. Pressing up and the attack button summons a metal blade to attack foes above and below us. Potentially a good tool, but also incredibly niche. You might not see it past the initial demonstration. There are 3 stars to the lower left next to Patchouli's mugshot. Those are our hit points. 3 is the absolute maximum. Amapani is not the type of game where you're expected to take much punishment. You don't even start a stage with 3 hits, only 2, and red power icons heal you by 1. The blue score icons are like Italian plumber man's coins. Big icons are worth 10, the more numerous small pieces only 1. 100 grants you an extra life, as is the gold standard. The yellow F icon we just grabbed is a full heal. Typically, games like these go from left to right, but we can get to an optional area here if we disregard that rule and successfully bounce on a few fairies. Patchouli's jumps are a lot floatier than those of the other girls, making bounces on enemies simpler to aim, so that challenge was especially easy for her. Golden books are the main collectible of Amapani. Finding enough of them unlocks extra stages in the post-game. They're either hard to reach, obtainable only by certain characters, or hidden behind puzzles. So as simple as the gameplay may seem, there are still secrets to discover for the curious completionist. I already have that particular golden book on this file. You have to collect unique ones to add to your total. Flagpoles serve as checkpoints to respawn at after an unfortunate death. I know this looks like easy peasy child's play right now, but you might die more than you'd imagine. I do like playing as Patchouli. Her excellent control in the air is so pleasant. But we will have to say goodbye to her for now. This tall gate marks the end of her scheduled level. Let's ramp up the difficulty for our next stage. World 1 is just too tame. And why not tackle something with a boss at the end? 2-8 should do. It's a job for the ordinary Marissa, dressed in a not-so-ordinary blood red. Her special skill for both combat and utility is that, a broom dash. It depletes almost a full stamina bar. That one's also on the lower left, just below our hit points. Marissa's secondary skill is a shorter broom dash, followed by the dropping of a magical grenade. Once again, I don't utilize this too often, but I can think of a few situations where it could be helpful. You can, for example, drop a grenade on a switch you cannot otherwise press. We sure messed up that jump and got hurt as a result. The brown Kedama can't be jumped on, I think they're unkillable, period. Just then we temporarily fell to 1 hit point. Notice that your stamina bar gets crossed out whenever you're so close to dying. That's meant to emulate the small version of Fat Italian Plumber Man, stripping you of all abilities until you regain a power-up. Or you mess up completely and restart. I sure hope we don't run out of lives. We only have 269 more on this file. Amapani hands out extra lives like cheap candy. Since our video doesn't have 4 hours or so left to go, you shouldn't expect to see the game over screen. Still, it'll take us a while to get back to where we were. I remember some time ago, an interesting discussion cropped up with the newest Crash Bandicoot game. As in that lives in these kinds of platformers are nonsensical, that it's just an old relic of game design that's being carried around for the sake of it. There's definitely something to that. I mean, we've had indie platformers that have disposed of that feature without making themselves noticeably less fun. Celeste comes to mind. Through this double door awaits the boss fight I've alluded to. It's against Star Sapphire? No, all 3 mischievous fairies make up our opponent. We only saw Star first because they're combining their powers to cloak themselves most of the time. This is the gimmick that makes this otherwise pretty milquetoast battle interesting. The Fairies' Invisibility may seem a little cheap at first, but it's not too unfair in practice. Not only will they occasionally appear, but you can guesstimate their positions pretty well from the spawning bullets and how those fly. It would be trickier if you could take contact damage from the fairies, but it's rather like they take contact damage from you. Entering their sprites in any way usually results in you hopping on them, and any damage dealing skill you have also works. Technically, this boss only has 2 hit points, but for 1 hit to be counted as such, all 3 fairies must be incapacitated, and that takes about 5 attacks on each individual member of the trio. Thinking about this might be more math than it's worth. Just beat them up. The cutscenes of this game are only in Japanese, unfortunately. No English patch seems to exist, but I have found translations of these conversations on the internet. The story is pretty standard for a Touhou fan game. Alice, Marissa and Patchouli each have had magical artifacts stolen from them, and they're now searching for the thief. I suppose Nitori is just along for the ride out of solidarity. Anyway, the 3 fairies are obviously not the culprit. The game wouldn't just end after 2 worlds. To get a new lead, the girls return to Nazrin, who was the World 1 boss. She can help out thanks to her power of locating missing objects, and sends us off to the Bamboo Forest of the Lost, which is World 3. World 3 also contains the next level I wanted to show you. There is one there that is quite unique. One that is not only considered to be a difficulty spike, but also really out of character to the personality Amapani has built up until this point. 3-5 is going to be handled by Nitori, or how about a blonde Nitori? American Gaijin Nitori. That pit wasn't there a moment ago. Are we imagining things? Nope, it's one of those levels. Kaizo, as it's called. Basically, 3-5 is covered in traps that follow no rules and that are laid out specifically to trick first-time players by messing with their instincts. So why would Amapani suddenly become so unfair? Well, it only really lasts for this level. You'll understand once we find the mid-boss of World 3. Nitori's primary skill is a grappling hook that doubles both as an attack and a tool. Hitting items with it will automatically collect them. Her secondary skill is actually an incredibly useful one for a change, and the Kappa's main appeal. She can fly with a helicopter. Due to this, Nitori has a longer horizontal jumping distance than any other girl. The developers of Amapani, Desunoya and Assault Machinegun had made a game before this starring Nitori, Fantasy Explorer Nitroid. It's a Metroidvania, one that awards Nitori similar gadgets over its course, and many more. If Amapani's Nitori hadn't been severely nerfed in comparison, you wouldn't ever pick anyone but the shy river goblin. We have discovered a secret passage, and it led us straight to a golden book. It's typical for this stage to hide it with something as illogical as an illusionary wall. And now you know why this level had to be so kaizo. We should expect nothing less from Gensokyo's biggest troll, the White Rabbit of Inaba, Tei. Well, the final boss of this game might be an even worse troll, but I shouldn't reveal who it is. Tei is being really unhelpful in regards to our quest, so the gang decides to beat her up. 4 against 1 should be terrible odds for the rabbit, but she warns us that it might not be as easy going as we think. It's revealed that the place is littered with traps that were originally meant for Reisen, her poor, forever bullied colleague. We were too eager to chase Tei and paid the price. That's just how Kaizo levels mess with you. Although there are many of these gotcha moments, I don't think stage 3-5 is too terrible. You won't fall for each trick more than once, and with some care and intuition, you might even read into the level designer's thoughts and avoid the worst. If you know what's demanded of you, the execution isn't too challenging. It could have been much, much nastier. You don't have to look far to know how. Only a few months after, Desunoya and Assault Machinegun released another game called Urapani. I wouldn't call it a brand new title, nor a sequel, but rather a couple of things. A separately sold hard mode, a standalone expansion, or just a level pack. One description I really like is the ROM hack version of Amapani. As you likely know, there once was a Super Nintendo launch title called Super Fat Shroom Consuming Italian Plumber Man World. People loved it, but it's considered to be rather mild in difficulty. So when emulation came along, folks made ROM hacks, and being aimed at veterans of the original game, those tended to be really brutal on average. You can easily tell that the culture of the ROM hack scene has influenced Amapani and Urapani. We've been seeing lots of red spikes this level. Those, by the way, always kill you on contact, no matter your hit points. Earlier in the video, we saw them in black, then they are only as dangerous as a typical enemy. We are getting near the end of the stage and coming across many 1-ups. Obviously, those are cheap bait. Don't hastily go for them, always stay patient. To end level 3-5, only a single hop on Tei is required. Even though it looks like she has escaped, it's all part of the story. You know, we could be covering Worlds 4 or 5 next, but we've talked about Urapani extensively. Wouldn't it be a shame if that was all tell and no show? We should experience how different these two titles actually are. We'll be right back with Urapani, and I'll even bring a special surprise. Bis gleich. And we are back with a title screen that is a lot more gloomy looking than the last one. we can expect this to be much less forgiving. I'm going to give you a very special thing. See all these options on the menu? We don't only have to pick the first one, there are other game modes. This is the online connectivity, the net play, and as you can see, I'm setting up a room as the host, and I am not alone for this part. Introduce yourself.
Surprise! I'm the Crimson Chow, sometimes multiplayer complement to Gesh, and, well, that's exactly what I'm here for today.
Yeah, and I'm really happy that you had the time to show up, because the multiplayer mode of Urapani and Amapani is really special. It's really what makes this game not just generic platforming, but
I always like to call it
really
New Super Touhou Sisters Wii. That's the vibe I
get. Yeah. And we're going to find out why exactly here, because you can bubble, just like Mario bubbles in his somewhat newish games.
Man, those are years old at this point. It's weird. Very strange.
Yeah.
This game is very happy to design around making your life miserable even with multiplayer, as you'll see.
Yeah, but I still think it's a lot easier. It's especially Urapani is pretty much meant to be played by more than one player.
Which is of course why the extra stages are designed to be single player only, just to make you suffer more.
Yeah. So for this run of 2-8, I picked Alice in Cassin's costume, pretty much. Those are her colors.
Alice, I never clicked with me before. I thought it was just a random color scheme the whole time. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they thought of that when they designed her like that, or maybe just they wanted pink hair. Alice had no presence in the video before this. Basically because in early levels she's just not really all that useful. Alice basically has a special ability that she can block bullets. No one else can. And in the early game it's really not that important to block bullets. But when you get far in Urapani, there may be some levels where it's almost mandatory.
If I remember correctly, as one of the things about Urapani is that Amapani did not actually have everyone with 2 powers the way Urapani does. Some had 2 and some had 1.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think
maybe in an earlier patch? Maybe some got patched in?
That could be it. The one I distinctly remember that was new for Urapani was Marissa's ability to drop bombs.
Oh, yeah. Well, by now, we can drop bombs in Amapani.
Huh. That sounds like I played it early on. I do think I played the 1.0 version, so I think that probably just got added later. Synced up the
That
game.
has to be it. We really had some trouble making it up there with the 3 drops.
And by you mean me, not you.
Yeah. Well, it's alright. In those cases, you just wait on the other player, and in case the other dies, they can bubble.
Unless the game doesn't let you, like it loves to do in World 5.
Yeah, when it scrolls, for example, then waiting is no good. The 3 fairies are a little bit harder in Urapani than they are in Amapani, but not by that much.
Fitting for the characters. If anything, I would say that the chase scenes are harder than the actual boss fight.
Yeah, that I didn't show in the previous video at all, that the 3 fairies have a little bit more presence throughout World 2.
Whoops,
it's
sorry
not
for
just
the spoilers,
this...
viewers.
Yeah. Well, I've shown much later levels than World 2. But yeah, there are interesting chase levels, and so you really get to know everyone individually, and only this is now the big fight against all 3.
And then you get to watch yourself smack into spiky death at the end of the chase.
Yeah. Yeah, the chases, they weren't easy. They weren't easy at all. But they weren't as hard as the second half of our multiplayer session here. I've
Oh
got
boy.
something nasty in store.
I don't even remember how we did that the first time.
I
Probably
don't
died a
either.
lot.
We did beat the whole game years ago when we had our multiplayer sessions.
Except for the extra levels, which clearly we
Yeah.
know. If any of you want to be a third person for the 3-player exclusive video, please sign up. I haven't played that ever, and I'd like to.
I think making such a video would be very harrowing. It would feature lots of failure.
Hey, it's worth a shot!
So for our second half, we are playing 3-5, as I
And you
also
can see
did
how
for
it starts.
Amapani. Yeah, so the Kaizo aspect of the Amapani 3-5 really wasn't all that bad when you have this in comparison. It's pretty nuts. The thing
Urapani's
is,
entire existence is just Desunoya wanted to make a Kaizo hack of one of his own games. That's
Yeah.
it. That's the game.
the separately sold expert mode, pretty much.
He did that for Tobari too, actually. There's Dream Ocean, which is the regular story-based game, and then there's Nightmare Ocean, which I haven't played, but which I know is a hell zone.
Oh boy.
Though I can accept that in cases like this, where it's basically the entire game remixed. It's not like just here, an extra world at the same price as a full game.
Yeah, I think it has the right to be a separate product, yeah. It's really too bad I didn't get there with a power-up. We really had no chance there when the rabbits showed up.
Oh, the games are so perfectly designed for suffering. That's the Desunoya way.
Yeah,
Well,
they
at
really
least
moved
it's not-
away. They really moved away from making Touhou fan games, unfortunately. Even after the release of Touhou on Steam, I haven't seen anything like that. They really wanted to have their own
think-
IPs, yeah.
Tobari is incredibly cute and good, so I support that.
Yeah. It wasn't exactly mine, so we won't have a video of that ever.
Sad.
But it's alright. It has its fans.
Like me.
Exactly. Now here we did some really good teamwork. It might not look like it a little bit. It might look like I'm just standing here doing nothing, but
That's the
when you know
teamwork.
how bubbling works, this is really smart. Yeah, we've got illusionary blocks all around here. You
My
usually
job was
have to
basically
look at
scout
the...
and die.
Exactly, but it works. It hasn't worked so far, but it worked in the end. Yeah.
See?
And that I die there really doesn't matter at all. We made it to the flag. All
And
that
then I had to
counts.
see what that platform was, and then it turned out to be death. What a
Yeah,
trick.
the golden book is somewhere completely different, I think.
Yep.
It would be much too harrowing to find that out. I really didn't want it for this recording. And of course, the Tay chase is completely unreasonable immediately.
Because of course
With-
it is. I mean,
Yeah.
who else would be... I mean, she's the trickster rabbit. I bet she set up this entire game.
Yeah. You like to play as Nitori most of the time, I've noticed. She is really good.
Yeah, I just really like both the grappling hook and propeller combo. So
Yeah.
I also lean Patchy. Alice and Marissa haven't clicked as well for me, but I'll play them.
Yeah.
Especially in those extra levels where it's literally just you have to play them. But that doesn't count.
Yeah, the extra levels really are puzzle levels.
Like the one where it's literally just Marissa and Alice's trapped tower.
Oh yeah, yeah, another Desunoya game. Oh, we've got performance issue here.
Oh yeah, I had forgotten about this reason for... Well,
Yeah.
that's what happens when you try to do international video games. Hey,
Yeah.
it could be worse. It could have been Keigi Kaiden Online.
Yeah, that one has not a good netcode at all, but
Yeah,
this one really worked well for us.
Yeah, the
actually,
problem
we
with-
had
Sorry.
we had really few issues with the netcode.
The thing about the Desunoya netcode is that when it starts suffering, all it does is buffer. So maybe you slow to crawl at 10 frames per second, but you slow to crawl at 10 frames per second together. Gatling Cat desynced, and that was just a killer.
It's bullet time, it's just Neo in the Matrix.
I remember when I started Touhou gaming on a really bad laptop, and the norm for me was somewhere around 20 FPS. Boy, that was a dark time.
Well, that's pretty much our video. I hope we gave everyone a good impression of Amapani and Urapani. And
thanks for
by the way,
having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for being on.
Goodbye.
Goodbye everyone. Bis bald.